pleasure to have all of you here today. We wanted to kick this off for, well, many a reason, and we are very grateful to have all of you here. We are and have been dealing with the challenges that this pandemic has brought us and continues to throw our way. And if you're like me, there is a reason, and we have seen the opportunity to create and design a little differently in the way we deliver our services and our programs. So through these sessions, and we are going to have two webinars over the course of this week and next week for the two programs we are bringing forward. We are looking to build on, this is a capacity building initiative, First Work in partnership with the Ontario government, as well as Danielle and team through Purpose. So I wanted to bring forward these two training programs, LaunchPad and Online Together. It is employment service. We are connecting these programs to employment service providers across the province to help strengthen the success of economic recovery for all Ontario. These new training programs are available regardless of location and membership, so it does not at all preclude you to only being a First Work member. This is very much open to everyone, and it is application-based admittance. These programs are intended to support and enhance participating organizations' program delivery by either training staff to incorporate new approaches into program design or develop new programming, like entirely new programming that meets the needs of local employers and job seekers. They're both highly interactive and applied programs, and you're going to get a lot more from Danielle and Meg. So I'm going to pause for a moment. And before I pivot over to the two of you, I wanted to introduce Joanne Pryor, the SDM, like our service delivery one of the service delivery managers from the ministry, to just say a few words. Joanne, over to you.
Hi, Aksua. Thank you for inviting me. I just wanted to let you know how happy we are to work with you, and I'm really pleased to be here to help kick off your first webinar for this program. And I wish you all the best, and looking forward to working with you throughout the next few months and year or so. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Aksua, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Joanne. And just so that for anyone that doesn't know who I am, because I haven't introduced myself, I am Akosua Gratnam, the Executive Director for First Work, Ontario's Youth Employment Network. For those of you who don't know who First Work is, we are an umbrella organization that represents over 80 youth employment service providers that focus on youth programming. We bring together the best providers of youth programming and employment services in developing solutions for youth employment. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce both Danielle Olson and Meg Saxby, who will be hosting and leading the rest of this session. I will jump in on and off, Danielle and Meg, as you see fit, but I'm going to pivot over to you to kick us off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Akosua and First Work team, and Joanne and her team from the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development for their support, and Joanne for joining us today. So welcome to our webinar, which is all about the LaunchPad program, which Akosua gave you a little bit of kind of framing for in her intro. I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 minute. So I'm joined by my colleague, Meg Saxby. And Meg and I created the LaunchPad program that we piloted last summer that we're going to tell you, summer of this year, actually, so summer of 2020, in partnership with First Work, that we're going to tell you a lot more about. My background is workforce development. I have designed and led organizations that delivered sector-focused workforce programs in Toronto, and have also worked in a policy capacity. And Meg has a very complementary background to mine.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see some of your faces again. I recognize a bunch of folks in this room. Yeah, as Danielle said, my background is different, but complementary. I'm a social worker by training, do a lot of work on adult education, adult learning. I've also worked a lot in small businesses, cooperatives, and social enterprises. And I also do a lot of work with people who've experienced harm. So I bring a trauma-informed lens to everything I do. And I'm very excited to be talking about this program again. It was a lot of fun to design and deliver.
Thanks, Meg. So before we jump in to our agenda, we'd actually love just to take 2 or 3 minutes and use the chat to hear from folks who are on the call. So if you could use the chat and tell us what location in Ontario you are joining us from and what made you interested in this program, like what brought you to the webinar. And for anyone who doesn't know where the chat is, it should be on the black bar on the bottom of your screen. You'll either see a button that says chat, or there's a box on the right that says more with 3 dots. And if you go to more, it'll say chat at the very top. And then your chat will come up. So tell us where you're joining us from and what made you interested in the webinar. So Linda is from PPRC in Ottawa and was interested in learning new strategies. And Linda, are those specifically new program design strategies or specific strategies? Great. So Pam's from 360 Kids in York Region, program design, delivery, and outreach. That's great. Oh, wow. We have someone joining us from Alberta, which is wonderful. Working in employment placement and support services and curious about online program design and delivery. Great. Anne Marie from Thunder Bay. Interested in the potential for ES and LBS collaboration. Great. Thank you for sharing that. We have the Thunder Bay DSAB, which is wonderful. Okay. Wonderful.
Muskoka, Walkerton. Great. More from Thunder Bay. So it looks like a lot of folks are interested in, they perhaps heard about it. So I see Deborah in Walkerton. She's heard about it through the local Y that did the pilot.
That's great.
Strategies to work with vulnerable youth and keep them engaged. New, innovative, and collaborative ways to support our clients. Fantastic.
So it's really great to kind of have a sense of the geography and also have more of a sense of your programming. So we'll touch on some highlights based on that. However, we also encourage you throughout the presentation to put questions in the chat. Meg and I will mutually monitor it, and where possible, we'll answer your questions as we go. And alternatively, we'll have time at the very end of the presentation to take questions and to answer any outstanding questions. If we are, inundated with questions, First Work will also send out a memo with any questions we were not able to answer. So just know that your questions will be answered. So I just want to give you a sense of what we're going to cover right now or over the next 45 minutes or so. So we're going to just kind of go into more detail about the program, what the program is. So what is LaunchPad and what the expected learning outcomes are for participants who would be you potentially, or people who work in employment service organizations or employment and training service organizations. We're going to talk about the criteria. So kind of what the eligibility criteria is and who should apply. Outside of learning outcomes, what the kind of broader outcomes of the program are, timelines, which include applications, structure, and Q&A. And again, encourage you to put your questions in the chat as we go. So just to start, the LaunchPad program is being billed as, and we are describing it as a training for employment service providers to basically learn how to, and then to design dual customer pre-employment programs that prepare vulnerable people, vulnerable job seekers often, for in-demand jobs, or prepare them with skills that are needed by employers and by the labor market. So that's what we mean by dual customer, that the workforce program has an explicit intention to meet the needs of the job seeker or the worker, because in some cases it can be a lower skilled incumbent worker, as well as employers. And there's a reason for this, which we wanted to really talk about off the top. There's also a lot of research and evidence that support this approach. It's often described, it's dual customer is somewhat synonymous and not with sector strategy. So you'll sometimes hear this described as a sector strategy. We're intentionally not using that language because sector strategies can take years to build. And we are talking about designing a program. But a dual customer approach has a lot of similarity to a sector strategy. And they work because they seek to do two very specific things at the same time, which strategically reinforce one another. So we know that vulnerable people that we serve in the labor market face specific barriers. Often these include a lack of previous work experience or a lack of recognized experience, skills, and credentials, often lower levels of confidence, fewer social connections to connect them to jobs, and potentially histories of trauma and experiences of poverty, which we know can set people back in a variety of ways. And we also know that employers, for a variety of reasons, have difficulty attracting and retaining talent or workers in entry-level positions in many sectors. So that's the kind of background or the reason why dual customer, and the approach specifically seeks to address both of those needs in order to create sustainable outcomes for both people and businesses, and with a real focus on low-income people. So what is LaunchPad? LaunchPad is a 16-week applied learning and program design, capacity building initiative, as Akoso said. So the target audience of the program are people who are designing and delivering employment and training programs actively for low-income people. And specifically in the 16-week program, you are going to be taught a series of methods and tools in order for you to be able to design a customized dual customer workforce program. Key components of that include, and we're going to get into the learning objectives in detail, but building partnerships with regional employers and aligning programming to the specific talent and operational needs of companies that are hiring. And then, of course, engaging and supporting skill development and retention of vulnerable job seekers. And we'll talk when we get into the learning objectives of some of those specific components that seek to at least adapt and recognize the challenges when people have experienced trauma, with an additional focus on retention.
Danielle, can I interrupt for a moment? Could you give people a couple of examples of the kinds of sectors and employers that our last cohort of LaunchPad folks were working with, so that they can imagine the kinds of work that they could be developing?
That's great, Meg. And in the program, there will be a process for you to select a sector or select targeted occupations, because not all occupations are necessarily a sector per se, as economic development would define them. So you will select a targeted occupation and or sector based on the demand and need in your local community. And because the economies across Ontario and potentially Alberta are so diverse, that is very much in your control. In the summer pilot, there was a broad range. There were 6 agencies and 21 people that participated. And there was a range from manufacturing to retail to agriculture, agri-food. Those were the top, and actually different types of manufacturing. So food manufacturing, as well as non-food manufacturing, retail, and agri-food. So very diverse. Thanks, Meg. So in terms of the program content, and we're going to go into this in more detail, it's very specifically the LaunchPad is training you on a particular approach, which is the dual customer program development and delivery approach, as well as a series of specific tools and methods. So there will be particular modules that we're going to touch on in the learning objectives, for example, related to goal setting, to build motivation in your clients, as well as some specific to kind of trauma-informed practice and supporting resilience within clients. But a lot of the material is actually going to be working with you to using particular approaches and methods. So you are designing your own program, which is, again, customized in response to the needs of your targeted employers. And some of those methods include adult learning best practices with a focus on applied learning, best practices in delivery, coaching methods, and non-clinical tools to support people to advance their goals and increase their resilience, as well as trauma-informed practice, like an approach to trauma-informed practice integrated into your program design and delivery. And all of these practices are informed by some body of evidence. And we can define evidence in different ways. There are actually longitudinal studies related to sector strategies, so that when programs are designed in partnership with employers and really to address a lot of the barriers that people face, in these particular studies, people actually experience higher wages and more retention over a long period of time. And there's similar research related to adult learning best practices, trauma-informed practice, and some of the tools that you will be trained on in the program. And I should also say that we are joined today by Mela Portier, who will be one of the instructors in the new year, although you'll have a few. I'm going to turn it over to Meg.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about what exact learning you're going to be doing in this program. So Danielle has been mentioning dual customer programs. So all the programs that we develop through LaunchPad, all the folks who work in a LaunchPad program are developing a dual customer program. So you'll be designing that based on the local industry needs in your environment. So for example, I live in Hamilton. There's a couple of key areas where the Hamilton workforce is not strong enough, and there's industry demand. So those would be niches. You will look at your local environments, and you will choose a job that's in demand, and you will design a program to meet those needs. So that's about designing industry-specific applied training. You'll also learn about using specific tools to screen people to enter into your programs, right? So that you're targeting your work towards the job seekers that have the most motivation and are the best chances of being successful. We'll also support you to select a targeted occupation. As Danielle mentioned, not every occupation is ideal for this kind of approach. Some occupations take much longer time to train for, but some occupations, many occupations, if they have a well-designed applied training, you can skill people up to begin fairly quickly. So that's the goal behind this program. Find a targeted job that's highly in demand and help your job seekers skill up to the level that local employers need. In order to do that, you'll be looking at a job requirements analysis, which is a tool that allows you to understand exactly what's involved in a given job. And then you'll be doing this whole approach using adult learning best practices. So adults learn best by doing, reflecting, and sharing. So that's what we're going to be doing with you, and that's also what you're going to be doing with your clients. So these are some of the kind of technical pieces that we're going to be working towards. I know it sounds like a lot, but we're going to be doing it together, and you'll be working with colleagues from across the province or potentially across the country. So you'll be able to learn from one another as you go. And now, perfect, my next slide here, these are some of the, what you might consider the softer tools that we use to achieve those previous technical outcomes. So the first is client motivation. So there's a great body of evidence and research about how you can actually build motivation into a program. You can select for highly motivated people, and then you can keep them motivated as they go. Another important conversation is, how do we think about anti-racism, equity, social justice, and inclusion? We know that a lot of job seekers are disadvantaged because of factors like racism. So how do we keep that in mind so that whatever we're developing is available and includes all kinds of learners, all kinds of job seekers? Similarly to that, we know that a lot of our clients have faced a lot of harm in the past, maybe are currently facing harm. And so we need to integrate a trauma-informed practice in everything we do. We'll also be working on coaching methods that include all of this. And we'll be looking at systems change. So not only how do we help this individual job seeker, but how do we help a given industry, a given job area shift towards being more appropriate, more open, more inclusive to job seekers. And then the last thing, this is one of the things we use in the trauma-informed practice. How do we give people tools along the way? Let's say that they're with us for 2 months while they're getting skilled up for an entry-level manufacturing position. We want them to leave those 2 months with more tools that help them support their own resilience, their emotional self-regulation, their relationships, their conflict management. So we want to use those 2-month opportunities to really bolster those tools for resilience. Because again, the research tells us that makes it more likely for people to succeed. I'm just going to pause because I said a lot of things, and I just want to check in the chat if there are any questions or anyone wants to make any comments. Jackie's asking about, is this available in French? That's a great question. Not yet is the answer. Danielle, do you want to say more on that?
Yes, I was just actually messaging with a COSWA. So it's possible. There's 2 options. The material is not currently translated, like as in the workbook, which is actually like almost 200 pages for context. However, if there was a contingent, if there was a large Francophone contingent, some of our colleagues are bilingual, so we could offer it in French. We could also have a French instructor do some translation in real time. So what we would ask for is, when you do your application, if you can indicate that, and there's like a question that says, is there anything else we should know? Which will be great data for us to try to accommodate as much as possible. So we're going to get into the question about time commitment. It's a great question. So I'm just going to hold that one until we get to that slide.
Any other questions about the learning outcomes? Are there particular questions anyone has about a given term we've used that's not clear? So to keep it in your mind, basically there's, if you want to think about it, 2 really big areas. One is this technical question of, how do we work with employers to determine what are in-demand jobs, and how do we train for those in-demand jobs? And the second one is, how do we work with our clients to keep their motivation up, to help them participate, to support them, particularly if they've had histories of harm. So these are like these 2 big pieces that this course works with. And then this question of how do we do it? Danielle, do you want me to cover this one, or would you like to? You want me to? Okay, great. So it's a 16-week program, and it's not just a cognitive program. So you're not just going to be listening to someone talk. You're going to be doing as you go. So yeah, we'll have a teaching call, but then you will take the assignment, you will work on them in your agency group, and you'll actually start to design your program, which means you'll be reaching out to potential employers once you've done a bit of research. You're going to be taking those active steps. So yes, we're giving you the theory, but we're also giving you tools that are going to guide you into action, and then a place to talk about that. So you can hear from one another, oh, we thought this was a great option as a job. We talked to a few people, we realized, nope, dead end, and we had to change course. That's totally fine, and that's encouraged. This is an active learning opportunity. It's not really like school. It's more of a solid, supportive coaching and technical learning program. Maybe that was what your school was like. If so, that's great. And then afterwards, we have 12 weeks of post-program implementation support. So you're doing a new thing, right? You're developing this new approach, and that's fantastic. And we want to encourage that. So that means follow-up. We're going to support you afterwards as you're going, when you're saying, hey, we're really hitting a wall here and we need some help. Heidi is saying, will you provide information on the type of technology we're servers? Yeah, we can give you that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe
Internet.
Mm-hmm. A point of clarity, Heidi, do you mean, yes. So like platforms to deliver your programs virtually? Yes, absolutely. We take a particular approach to the delivery, which is reliable, cheap, and accessible. There's a reason for this, which we'll talk about. So for example, we use Zoom, and we talk about why. Yes. But there are obviously other options. We will also be using an online sort of communication platform. So yes, you will get that too.
So you're going to be online in small groups. So you'll be in a small group with the facilitators, and then you're going to be in another small group with your agency participants. So it's going to be a couple of people from each agency. So it's going to be highly interactive. And that is how we learn.
Thank you, Meg. We're going to get into this further around the time requirements, but the intention is over the 16 weeks that you actually design your program. So when Meg says that it's highly applied, every week, which is a different module, you're going through another step, which is designing your program. So in some cases, you're going to be working on the employer side, as Meg described. In other cases, you'll be working on specific curriculum, because we're going to teach you a method to develop lessons that really seek to hit on the key sides of learning that really enforces learning for participants. And then in some cases, it will be specific modules related to trauma-informed practice or goal setting and others that we have.
So our delivery team, and this is both the people who have designed this program as well as the people who will be delivering, we wanted to bring together different streams of practice. So obviously, a key stream of practice here is what works in terms of training and workforce. How do we help people who face barriers land jobs that will pay enough wage to take care of them? So that's one stream of knowledge and practice. Workforce development, design, and delivery. A second stream is how do we work with adults who are trying to learn a new thing? How do we do that well? How do we do that in awareness of the different experiences of harm and oppression that people are bringing to the conversation? And then the third piece, which is connected, is how do we use coaching and different kinds of tools to help people self-regulate, take care of themselves, take care of each other as they're learning a new thing, because learning can be hard. So these are the three streams that we've pulled together to build this, and they're also the three streams represented in the delivery team. Do you have any stuff you want to add on that, Danny?
No, it's just really the combination of skills within the team. So it's largely adult educators with expertise in both design and delivery, but also anti-oppression, and then the workforce development, design and delivery. And actually I'm being nerdy. Several of our team are actually clinical social workers. So that's part of the expertise that you are getting with a focus on some somatic practices and other coaching practices. Okay, so Meg touched on this a little bit in terms of the delivery process. Thank you, Meg. And feel free to keep asking those questions in the chat. So the cohorts, the program is 16 weeks. You will be in a cohort of no more than 25 people. The applications are agency teams of 2 to 3 people. And the reason for that is it takes at least 2 people to run a program, often more, we know. And also we know that things happen in people's personal lives. There can be job change. It's not uncommon. So to support the sustainability of the initiative within the agency, the participation is in teams. So teams of 2 or 3 people per agency. So that means out of a group of 25, we will have, between, my math is not great, like 8 and 12 agencies participating. The program is delivered live over Zoom, and it's 3 hours of live delivery a week. And the times for the January 18th start date are confirmed actually. And this is in FirstWorks FAQs as well. So it's Monday from 1 to 4 or Tuesday from 9 to 12, because we're going to have 2 cohorts running at a time. There will be 1 small peer group call. And then we estimate it's about 2 to 3 additional hours of independent work per week. And there will be 1 weekly assignment submitted per week, which is all tracking towards the development of your program. So we'll all be very applied and applicable to the program that you'll be developing.
So we have a question from Stacy in the chat saying, if a staff is registered and actually can't attend, can another staff sit in for them for that class? So there's no problem with an additional person sitting in. What I would say is the program builds on itself. So for a person who's coming in, say at module 10, it might be interesting for them, but they may not be able to follow or have the background to benefit as much from that conversation. Certainly it wouldn't be a problem. But
I'm going to actually, sorry, Meg, I'm going to interrupt because we actually very strongly recommend and actually ask that the staff who commit can attend all of the classes.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense to have random bits.
So only in the case of like staff change would we want others subbing in. Part of why we have the team approach is that we know there will be a division of labor. So some people on the team will likely be more employer facing, whereas other people on the team will be more client or job seeker facing. So you may divide and conquer the work in that way. There will likely be opportunities for you to engage other staff in the material. Certainly you can do that in your agency. And if there's enough demand, we can create opportunities to bring in your staff, but there should be continuity. I'm sorry, Meg.
No, I think that's much clearer. No, I think it's good. Yeah, so plan to be there all the time. Carolyn is also asking, is the 1 small peer group call per week? Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's 1 hour, it's a 1 hour peer call.
So if we do the math here, we've got per week, 3 hours of delivery, 1 hour of a small group peer call, and then 2 to 3 hours of independent work. So we've got about 7 or 8 hours every week.
So the criteria to participate, as Akosua and Joanne sort of said at the beginning of the meeting, the program is being very generously supported by the Ontario government through the Ministry of Labour, Training and Skills Development, which is someone who has worked in the sector for, shockingly almost 20 years, which is always shocking to me, is really quite remarkable when the province is funding capacity building, and particularly this type of capacity building. So we want to really acknowledge that, as well as FirstWorks leadership, to really make this available to service providers in Ontario, so that there's no cost. The value we've estimated conservatively at around $4,500 a person. Certainly, if you were to pay a consultant to help you do this, it would be much more, but all this to say there's no cost to you to participate. However, the commitment is big. So what we are, in addition to time, which, yeah, Kelly, that's a great question. We'll answer that.
There's another one from Karen about assignments.
Yes, no, these are great. So in addition to the, let's say, 6 to 8 hours of time commitment per week, which are 4 active hours, be it in the course or in the small peer group, and then independent work. It's also the commitment to actually design and then test. So design and deliver what we're saying is a minimum of a 3-week industry-specific pre-employment program in partnership with regional employers to 2 cohorts of job seekers over the following year. So over the 12 months after you finish the program. We're saying it's a minimum of 3 weeks because if you wanted to make it 6 weeks or even 12 weeks, you can. There's nothing stopping you. We say a minimum of 3 weeks so that we know that job seekers are getting like a floor of knowledge and a floor of preparation to support them and your industry partners. Is there a time frame for the 2 cohorts? Yeah, so we're saying within a year after completing it, you could do them back to back if you wanted. And in terms of the assignment completed in agency teams, so it will be a combination, actually, Karen. In some cases, it will be agency teams. In other cases, it will be individual. I want to say it's about 60 to 70% in agency teams. And then the balance are individual reflections and exercises that will prepare you to better to do the work. But I'd say 2/3 are agency teams. Expected cohort numbers, the number of people per cohort, I'm interpreting that question to be from Kelly. So yeah, if it's a live course, so if you were live, sorry, wrong word. If it was an in-person course that you were delivering in person, we would suggest between 8 and 15 people. Online, those numbers can be smaller. So I'd say between 5 and 15. Some practitioners, particularly working with multi-barriered people online, have had much more success with small groups of around 5. So that's up to you. We would normally recommend capping it at 15 unless you had a really good reason to make it larger. Question from Jennifer. Is the intention that these models will work within the EO program model or that funding is needed to? Great question. So when we get to the timeline, our team in partnership with First Work will, as you are as you are designing your program, we will help you make information available that you could potentially access or help you potentially access funding from the province, specifically in the stream of the Canada-Ontario Job Grant Consortium application. First Work has been doing work with MLSTD around this, so that is a potential funding source. Alternatively, you need your own funding to deliver the pre-employment program. So some of our alumni from the pilot used YJC funding. Some of them already had funding from different streams for more explicit technical skills. Some actually used their Employment Ontario Employment Services budget. But we are hoping to help you tap into other funds to actually deliver your programming. So that the commitment to design and deliver and to test your program in practice after the training, the commitment of 2 to 3 staff for 16 weeks for a minimum of 6 hours a week to design your program, and really a desire to test new ways of working and to challenge the status quo. Which, because you are here, we are confident that you have. The group that participated in the pilot this summer were remarkable, as you are. They are remarkable, and we're already testing new ways of working. So just because this is not a program with guidelines, we're not handing you guidelines. The approach, and when you read the case studies that are part of the material that you will learn, the power of the approach really comes from the customization, which is why we are really teaching a method to design and deliver with some tools, but that it is highly customizable. In the summer, we build LaunchPad as a train the trainer because we were training agencies and not participants. We are not giving you a curriculum though, and that's something we want to be really clear about. We are giving you a series of modules, but I'd say we're giving you maybe 4 modules. The bulk of it is really the practices to design and deliver your customized program. Are you able to share who some of the participants were in the pilot, agency names? I will defer to Akosua there just because I don't know Akosua.
The one thing, I mean, I know that some agencies have offered their own testimonials to the project, because that was one of the reasons why we decided to really put this program forward. I want to get their comfort with sharing that first, but I definitely will. Like, so when we share this webinar outside of this of today's session, I will get their confirmation that they're okay to share their names and their testimonials, so that way you have an idea of what they went through. And I also want to preface and highlight that their program, no problem, Kelly, their program was very tight, intense, and I because I recall this because there were a few people saying, can you stretch it out over a longer period of time and give us more time to do our other work. So that's why we came up with this version, right? And so I want to preface that before we do the share, but we'll happily do that, Kelly, and you will get that when you get our final webinar. Okay.
For context, and we did call it a boot camp in July. It was 4 weeks. It was 4 weeks, 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. And for a variety of reasons, we have spread it out to be 16 weeks. The primary reason being we feel like that's a more reasonable amount of time to actually design the program, because it takes time to hear back from employers and it takes time to set up those meetings. But again, the alumni group were rock stars. So yes, stay tuned for that information. Okay, so the outcome. So in addition to the learning outcomes that Meg has already described, the goal of LaunchPad is really, again, for you to design and deliver your own industry-specific pre-employment program in order to prepare job seekers for in-demand jobs while in partnership with industry employers very specifically. Through the methods and through the actual program delivery to increase participants' confidence, self-efficacy, and resilience. It's like it is an explicit component and goal to help build new habits and motivation, really to help your participants move towards their goals in a way that is sustained. So there is a focus on retention as well. And then, of course, to really connect people to jobs. That is so we are being ambitious in that we are seeking to build your skills and your practice while also seeking to impact participants. Really, the work that you would be doing would be impacting the participants. And our timelines. So the upcoming course, which starts on January 18th, the deadline to apply is December 2nd. We are doing interviews. They're 30-minute team interviews. And the reason for the interviews is largely to make sure that everybody has the same expectations and an alignment, because it is a big investment of time. Applicants will receive confirmation by December the 15th, and then the program starts on January 18th. You will receive a workbook in the mail. Materials will be available electronically, of course. You'll start to get information after December the 15th about what you can expect in January. Within the program, so before you finish the 16 weeks again, First Work will engage you around to explore funding opportunities, because we know to design really rigorous technical skills programming, it does take resources, certainly, often outside of what's within Employment Ontario. There will be a 12-week, and this is, it's not compulsory, but it's available, 12 weeks of technical assistance, as Meg described, to really continue to support the participants in implementing. So it will be coaching and troubleshooting and also peer support. At some point after you finish your program, you will move into the delivery of your pre-employment program. And First Work will follow up with you for 12 months after your program. We really just want to have a sense of the outcomes. So we'll certainly get lots of feedback from you around your learning outcomes and assessment of the training you receive. But First Work will also ask you for information around your participants, how many people you train, and what their outcomes are. Although we will seek to be as non-intrusive as possible.
We have some questions in the chat. Stacy's asking, do all members of the team need to attend the interview? Yeah, it's a group interview with anyone who would be from your agency in the course, needs to be in that conversation. Stephanie's asking, did we access the expertise of EO-LBS practitioners in developing LaunchPad? Danielle, do you want to speak to how we developed it?
And I also wanted to comment on LBS specifically. We did interviews and focus groups actually with practitioners in advance of building LaunchPad. However, that was largely used to inform existing best practices and challenges. So to really understand kind of what the need was within the sector. The bulk of the program curriculum specifically. So for example, we did not have a curriculum advisory committee to design the program. Although we will be doing interviews from all of the alumni from the pilot. The bulk of the program was developed based on existing practices, research evidence in the areas that we've talked about.
Another question. Did you want to comment on the LBS? Sorry, Danny. Or
Yeah. So for LBS, within this approach, there are a few, I'm thinking the best way to frame this. There are some options that fall within dual customer that are very applicable to LBS. So depending on the number of LBS providers, we could highlight or focus on some of these. They include the dual customer approach for incumbent workers. So for lower skilled people who are working within a sector, working with employers to design customized skill development so that people are developing, that skill development is accessible to low skilled workers in terms of available in their workplace or scheduled at times that work for them, also recognized by their employers, which will often correlate to them receiving greater wages or hours and to be recognized. So that's one. The other is occupation specific or contextualized essential skills and or language upgrading. So this could be part of a new entrant program, which is a best practice that we talk about. It could also be for incumbent workers. And basically it's saying if folks need to upgrade their math in order to work in this trade, if you deliver there, and you probably potentially already do this, but if you deliver the academic upgrading in the context of the trade they'll be doing, they will likely learn the math faster. And they're also learning the technical skills or information related to the work they'll be doing. And often the motivation is higher because there's like a sight line to employment and to their goals. So those are just two kind of examples that I think are more specific to LBS than traditionally employment.
Two more questions. One is about, do we have any data that we can share about our end users, how successful the clients of the first cohort have been? And the other is about an industry-specific SAO phase 2 program. Maybe we can address the clients first or the end users.
So the pilots have just finished. Some of them have not even finished yet. So we actually don't have, we don't have aggregate data. One of the 6 agencies delivered their program at the end of September. They were the first ones. Otherwise, most of them started at the beginning of November, and one has not started yet. In any case, the one that happened at the end of September, they delivered it online, largely to long-term social assistance recipients. And people, some of their participants got jobs immediately out of the program. So I got updates as soon as the program ended, which was a couple of weeks ago. So I don't know, on aggregate what their outcomes were, but that's just an anecdote. And then in terms of SAO phase 2, yes. So I just want to read the whole question from Kelly. We have a very similar industry-specific SAO phase 2 business proposal to deliver a program such as this in our city. Yes. But they've put it on hold due to COVID. Is this a duplication of the same idea? It's not a duplication per se. So the research or evidence that has informed Skills Advance Ontario, some of it is the same research that has informed this program. So this is a capacity building program for employment and training service providers with the goal of you designing and delivering your own program. It's not guidelines. It's not prescriptive. Or I should say it's marginally prescriptive. We ask you to use a few modules and give us feedback, but it is largely very customizable on your part. Skills Advance Ontario is a program, as you know, likely, designed largely and funded by the province of Ontario, that's informed by a program called Work Advance in the United States, which has been studied longitudinally. And it's one of those examples that I described. We view this as very complementary to Skills Advance. In fact, one of the pilot participating agencies from July are a Skills Advance delivery provider. And in terms of things being put on due to COVID, I think it's sort of case by case, depending on the region and the industry, because I know many SAO projects are moving forward. So we would hope that this would be complementary. Any other questions, Meg?
Not in the chat. We only have a few minutes left. So if anyone's got a burning question, now's the moment.
Yeah. So a colleague of ours who's on the call, Nicole, thank you, Nicole, has just nudged me to be specific about the application. So, and this is going to come out from First Work, this deck with the recording. So the application process is actually tiered because it is a large commitment on the part of the agency. We are asking for an agency sponsor application. It is sort of a shorter application. They're not intended to be burdensome. They're not grant applications. We really want to just get a sense from you around why you want to do this and what your goals are. And that is, we're using the same practices that we teach in the program. We want to make sure you know what you're signing up for, because we want your investment of time to be well spent and to be successful. We also are asking for an application from each of the participants participating, because it is also a big commitment of each individual. And what we have found in the past is that if participants are not, if your staff, your colleagues are not directly engaged, like you just don't get as much return for their time spent. The agency team interviews are 30 minutes. And the application, so we're currently, the deadline for December 2nd is for the program that starts on January the 18th. We are accepting 17 agency applications. And so that's agencies, so that the number of participants would be, 2 or 3 times that. But it is a first come, first serve application. So we are going to interview people interview teams, unless there's something that precludes, like if they can't make the time commitment or any of those basic criteria aren't there. Otherwise, we're going to interview and accept applicants on a first come, first serve basis, just to be equitable. And there would be a wait list created if we exceed the number of applicants for the January 18th start date. Any questions about the application? Maybe with our last minute, Evaluation requirements. So although we ran the pilot in the summer, we are very much embedding a continuous improvement approach to the delivery. We've already made a number of changes, for example, taking it from 1 month to 4 months. So what you can expect, some of it's pretty straightforward. So a kind of pre and post participant learning self-assessment. Those are also documents that you would have as a participant for yourself. A post-program agency participant interview. So we'll spend 30 minutes with every participant who goes through the program afterwards to get your feedback. And it would actually be after you deliver your program. Because again, in partnership with First Work, we really want to learn about what works for you and what changes. So we can, have this data as you've asked for here, and also continuously improve the program. And then First Work will be tracking basic information about the program outcomes. So basic demographic information of your participants and outcomes for 12 months after you deliver your programs. So I just got another nudge from Shifat on the First Work team. So just to be very explicit, if your agency wants to apply, your boss has to do an application, or at least someone has to do it for them if they don't do it themselves, which indicates the agency's commitment, because it's a big commitment of resources. And then everybody who's participating has to do the application. The applications are not more than 30 minutes each. They are designed not to be burdensome, but to really understand the goals that you have for participating. And I know we're at the hour, so maybe what we can do is just, if there are any, we had lots of great questions throughout. Thank you very much for everyone who asked the questions, because they definitely benefit the rest of the group. If you have any other questions, please send them into the First Work team, and we will make sure that you get them answered, or we answer them for you before the deadline.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle and Meg, and thank you for everyone on. Oh, what is the email? I believe we have it in here. Danielle, is the email in, or rather, we'll send out the email to everyone that's on this call, just so that you have all the information, and that way it's available. I want to say to everyone, I know Danielle, you have your hand up, but I want to say, go ahead.
No, you go.
I know that this is a commitment, and honestly, for us, it's a commitment to help build capacity and really pivot when we are put in this completely challenging environment, and it's an opportunity to rebuild and pivot to something greater, better for our sector as a whole, right? And for those youth that are applying for positions to get better programming and better services. And this is one way that we want to bring these resources to you.
Thank you, Akosua. So the application is live now. So you could apply today. That's a great question. And the application is also on First Works website under the training section. And thank you, Nicole. And in terms of the email, I'm actually suggesting that Akosua, that folks email, is it okay if they email Shifat if they have any questions? Okay, so Shifat, are you able to pop your email in there? I was just trying to bring it up super fast.
Here, I got it really
Perfect. So then you guys can field those questions too. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Again, thanks so much for joining. And if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, folks.